Hello, hello, check. 1, 2, 3, are you with me? Today is July 1st. It's 2 in the afternoon on the Eastern Seaboard Standard Time. And justice is so evasive, is it not? I want to start with a discussion about the plea agreement deal that's coming down the pike with the Idaho 4 case. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know a damn thing about anything. I will try to relate to you what I do know, because I do know some things. And I know that when I feel like giving up, that's not who I am. I am like the not giving up person. But when I heard about this plea agreement, my first thought was, I give up on true crime. It's a waste of time. This is ridiculous. And my interpretation of my experience with that is basically that we're being gaslit. So that's my opinion. We're all welcome to have our opinions, and everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, learn something, be educational. All my videos are made for YouTube. It's an infotainment platform. And please hit your like button. Make sure that you're still subscribed in the event that you are subscribed. And if you're not, please consider doing so. Sorry, my sign is so dark over there. If I try to fix it, I'm sure I'll screw everything up. So I'm not going to touch it. I'm not allowed to touch anything on my set because it will all just come tumbling down. It's okay, right? Share a video of mine with somebody that you think might like this channel, and turn on your notification bell to ring if you want to be notified when I come on live. So I apologize for not having any advanced notice of this live. Things have just been really chaotic it's summer. I've noticed that it's not just my channel, that a lot of content creators are decreasing the amount of content that they put out. It's not only summer, it's close to the 4th of July, which is when a lot of people travel. So we're coming up on Independence Day, and politically things are pretty freaking whack as far as I'm concerned, in my humble opinion. And I really do try not to connect things, because not everything is connected. But the ambiguity, the ambivalence of life and the universe is precisely that everything is connected, right? So my first thought with this Idaho 4 plea agreement with Kohberger is, okay, so maybe he's guilty. And then my immediate thought right after that is, he's just backed into a corner and he really has no choice but to take it. So it could mean a lot of things. Those who've watched my channel for a while know that I've been very suspicious of this case from the ground up. And I wouldn't say so much from the day that it happened, but from the couple of days after he was arrested. I think reading that the probable cause affidavit, the PCA, that's when I started shaking my head. The first thing I want to say about the whole Idaho 4 case is that my heart breaks for the families that they've lost their loved ones, and that they're losing, potentially feeling like they're ever going to have any justice. That's what's most important, is the families, the individuals. I could really just cry. I've known people that have been taken out by other people, red-roamed, and it is the worst thing imaginable for the families. Absolutely the worst thing imaginable. And justice is healing. Like, look at the Suzanne Morphew case. If we get justice with this, we'll see. Barry Morphew was just arrested a week and a half ago for the second time. I think about the Mia Zapata case. That was somebody that was a dear friend of my sister's. If you don't know about the Mia Zapata case, I have a lot of videos about it, and you can find a lot online about the Gits. Mia Zapata was the lead singer for a punk rock band called the Gits, who was red-rummed in Seattle in, I think it was 1993. Might have been 1994, but I'm pretty sure it was 1993. Anyway, it was right around this time of year, too. It was July, I believe. Let me look it up real quick. It's always good to know things. And I needed to make a couple of corrections from yesterday. I haven't had a chance to go onto my YouTube and do that. Let's see. Mia Zapata. So her unaliver, it took 10 years to arrest him. It was July 7th, 1993. And I'll just read you what it says right here. It's awful. Trigger alert, trigger warning. Mia Catherine Zapata, August 25th, 1965 to July 7th, 1993, was an American musician who was the lead vocalist for the punk rock band The Gits. After gaining praise in the emerging grunge scene, Zapata was raped and red-rummed in Seattle in 1993 while walking home from the Comet Tavern at the age of 27. So she also joined the 27 Club. She was also a friend of Kurt Cobain's. The crime went unsolved for a decade before her unaliver, Jesus Mesquia, was arrested in 2003. The following year, Mesquia was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 36 years in prison. And like I said, there's a lot of documentaries about her case. There was an Unsolved Mysteries episode about it. There was probably like an America's Most Wanted about it at some point. I'm not sure. But I do know that there's been a lot of made for television types of educational documentaries about her. And there's been other people that I've known personally. I didn't know Mia well. She was my sister's friend, like I said, but I hadn't met her, and it affected me indirectly because a lot of my friends were friends with her, and I lived in the area when it happened. I was actually living in Portland that year, but it was pretty unbelievable. I was very familiar with Seattle and with these people. I mean, I knew the whole band, actually, not just her. Anyway, it's really hard when you lose somebody to illness or an accident or self-injury, anything. It's really hard to lose somebody. In my opinion, it's worse when there's malice and intent. It's really awful. And when someone is just ripped from their life and victimized like that, and really everybody's victimized around them. But, in Idaho, we had 4 people. And I want to bring to your attention the name of somebody who's been scrubbed from the internet. He's the Idaho State Police trooper who took the knife sheath into evidence, personally took the knife sheath into evidence in the Idaho 4 case when it was discovered. Why he took it into evidence is a mystery, especially because he, at the time, was currently under investigation for Brady Giglio for another homicide in Bonners Ferry, Idaho. This is Trooper Tolson, kind of like Toll House Cookies is the way I try to remember it, because it's a hard one for me to remember, and you never hear about him. And like I said, it's really hard to find any information on him. So I'm going to see what happens. I had to search and search and search yesterday. So if I say Here, let me do my voice activated thing. Idaho State Police Officer Toolson. I didn't spell it right. It's Tollinson. I didn't spell it for you guys. Let me try that. Tollenson. Tollinson. And when I look up Idaho State Police Officer Tollinson, let's see. There's something on Reddit about it. Gary Tollinson, Detective Gary Tollinson. So the case that he was under Brady Giglio investigation for is the Dr. Drake Redrum. He was a chiropractor in Bonners Ferry who was allegedly redrummed by another chiropractic doctor named Dr. Moore. And there's a lot of funky business around the whole thing, but what I find the funkiest is the erasure of his name. And the erasure, the scrubbing of him off the internet is really hard to find anything about it. And I'm pretty sure that it is Tollinson, Tollenson. And like I said, first name is Gary. So while I was looking up information on him again yesterday, and I've looked him up many, many, many times because he is one of the stickiest points of this case, in my opinion. But what I wanted to write down was his first name. Detective Gary Tollinson. Look him up. See what you can find. Like I said, a lot about him has been scrubbed. There used to be a lot of articles about how he elicited a false confession from Dr. Moore about the unaliving of Dr. Drake. I don't think they've ever gotten the right person for that. Again, let me look that up because I don't like making stupid mistakes. And I'm always talking off the top of my head. So I like to do it that way, but that's why I look up so much stuff. So let's see. Chiropractor Dr. Drake, Bonners Ferry, Idaho, conviction for murder. Let's see what it says. Yikes, sorry for the noise. That's the hose outside the house. So it looks up. Well, let me see. I'm going to read you what artificial intelligence says, even though we know that that's not always correct. And what you find on the internet, you got to always take it with a grain of salt. In Bonners Ferry, Idaho, a chiropractor named Daniel Lee Moore was initially charged with the second-degree redrum of another chiropractor, Brian Drake, who was unalived in his office. However, the redrum charges against Moore were dismissed after a judge ruled his confession was inadmissible due to Miranda rights violations. While the criminal case was dismissed, a civil case was filed by Drake's widow, resulting in a $15 million judgment against Moore. And I'm going to read you the more detailed breakdown. Brian Drake, chiropractor in Bonners Ferry. And keep in mind that the lead detective in the Idaho 4 case, Brett Payne, owned a business in Bonners Ferry. Has owned that business for probably over 15 years, maybe close to 20 by now. Bonners Ferry is about 3 hours from Moscow, Idaho, I think, 3 or 4. Everything's a long distance in Idaho, I think, because of the mountains, having to drive through the mountains. You can't really go 60 or 70 miles an hour, right? So Brian Drake, a chiropractor in Bonners Ferry, was shot and killed in his office on March 12th, 2020. Initial arrest and charges. Daniel Lee Moore, another chiropractor in Bonners Ferry, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder in connection with Drake's death. Confession and suppression. Moore initially confessed to the crime, but his confession was later suppressed by the court due to violations of his Miranda rights. Dismissal of criminal case. Based on the suppressed confession, the criminal case against Moore was dismissed. But the detective that did this was Gary Tolinson. And his name has been scrubbed out of all of the articles that I could find. Like, it just leaves it up in the air, or there's other detectives that are mentioned, other law enforcement agencies that are mentioned. It's pretty bizarre. But, when you scrub something, right? Drake's civil case and judgment. Drake's widow filed a civil lawsuit against Moore for wrongful death, emotional distress, and other claims. The court awarded her and her family $15 million, $381,218 in damages. $15,381,218 in damages. What a weird number. This includes compensatory damages for financial losses and emotional impact and punitive damages due to Moore's, quote, extreme deviation from reasonable standards of conduct, end quote. So this was just like 5 months ago, I think, that this was ordered by the court. The Bonners Ferry Herald has an article from February 8th of 2025. And see, then it says this: currently, no one is facing criminal charges for the murder of Dr. Drake as the investigation continues. That is bizarre. That is truly bizarre. I kind of think that that's what's going to happen in the Karen Reed trial. The Karen Reed trial is over and she was acquitted on all charges. And who's going to get, are there any other suspects that are going to be arrested and tried in the obvious homicide of Officer John O'Keefe? I don't know. That's a case from Massachusetts, right outside of Boston, near Canton. And we have another case there that some of the police officers involved in the Karen Reed case are the same officers involved in the Sandra Birchmore case. If you don't remember Sandra Birchmore, if you've never heard of her, I'll put a link in the description to maybe one of my own previous videos about her. She was a 23-year-old who was allegedly red-rummed by her boyfriend, Matthew Farwell, who should be going to trial soon. I can't find an update about it, but it was initially deemed self-injury, and I think it's going back to like 2021 was when it happened. I don't think that there was an arrest made until 2023, but again, let me look up so I'm not screwing it all up. Sandra Birchmore. Okay, on February 4th, 2021, 23-year-old American woman Sandra Birchmore was found deceased in her Canton, Massachusetts apartment. Her death was initially ruled as a suicide by asphyxia. Federal authorities later deemed that her death was a homicide, with a local police officer alleged to have killed her. So interesting. So now with the Karen Reed trial wrapping up, it looks like there's some brand new articles about the Sandra Birchmore case. We've got one from Enterprise News that's 2 days old. So Stoughton Police Department is another department. They're outside of Boston. Braintree is the area. I kind of know the area. I've been there. I had a boyfriend that was from Pembroke, Massachusetts, a little bit south of there, but really close to Canton, Braintree, and Stoughton. Let's see. And it looks like they're going to have the death penalty on the table for him. Wait, what? Oh my goodness. I have to read this article from the Boston Globe that's 3 weeks old because I don't even know if I can believe this. The headline from the Boston Globe, and again, you have to be careful what you read online, just like you can't believe everything that you read in print, obviously. It says ex-Stoughton police officer charged with killing Sandra Birchmore did not father the baby she was carrying, DNA shows. But if I'm remembering right, he has an identical twin. So are they going to try to say that was his identical twin's baby? I don't even know. I don't think I can read this article without signing up, and I'm not going to sign up. So I'll put a link to the article in the description in case anybody wants to look at it. That is insane. 3 weeks old, Boston Globe. Anyway, let me run down a couple of the clarifications that I wanted to make from yesterday's live that I did that was just 1 hour long. And thank you for being here. It looks like there's somebody in the chat. If you want to say hi, and then I'll know for sure that you can hear me. It looks like you can hear me. So I'm just going to go along as if you can. So at about the 5.5 minute mark in my video yesterday, I accidentally said Hunter Chapin when I was talking about Hunter Johnson. For anyone who knows that Idaho 4 case and knows Hunter Chapin is Ethan Chapin's triplet brother. So Ethan Chapin, the only male that was unalived in the Idaho 4, he was one of a set of triplets. So Hunter Chapin is what I said, but what I meant was his friend Hunter Johnson, who was one of the main people that called 911 the following morning, and who had spoken out over the weekend with his girlfriend Emily on one of the major news networks. I also wanted to clarify that Amber Fry, I was mentioning her at some point in the video, and how I thought that maybe her brother was an attorney. So I looked up her brother. She has a half brother named Jason Fry, who has served our country as an Army captain and was formerly a San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputy. So I wanted to clarify that. I don't know. Maybe he is an attorney now. I don't know. I'll look more into that. I thought that I had heard that Amber Fry's brother was an attorney, and I thought that I had heard it from Edward on the Behind Criminal Minds channel, YouTube content creator, Edward, Behind Criminal Minds. Anyway, one more correction and then get back to today's information. Yesterday, towards the end of the video, 5 minutes before I wrapped it up, I was talking about the barefoot, not a bear's foot, but a human foot that's bare. But the way I said it, I don't think people could tell if you didn't know the case of Suzanne Morphew. There was a footprint in the Bobcat bucket of Barry Morphew's that law enforcement noticed on that Mother's Day of May 10th, 5 years ago. As soon as they got to his property and saw the Bobcat, first thing they noticed is that there was a footprint in it, and not a shoe print, but an actual foot of a human print in the bucket of the Bobcat. So that was extraordinarily revealing, especially when the very next thing that they noticed was that the blade, the nuts and the bolts were all brand new, hadn't been used once. So the blade, the nuts and the bolts had just been replaced on Barry Morphew's Bobcat the same day that he's reporting her missing. And there's a footprint in the bucket. So they were on to him right away. They were on to him before they even got to his house and saw the bobcat. They were on to him probably before he arrived to the location where they were at on the road. They had just they had found her bicycle, and so they were out there on the road where her bike was found at the bottom of the steep incline, or not the very bottom, but towards the bottom. That super expensive Santa Cruz bike that runs anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000. And I think she'd only had it for about a month. I think she'd only been mountain biking for about a month. And it was her daughter Macy's boyfriend, who I think was another mountain biker, who had been giving her a lot of guidelines on how to go about things. Because, mountain biking by yourself in the mountains in Colorado, it's pretty dangerous. A lot of people take a lot of spills. And I think she was trail riding, not road riding. I think she was doing the mountain biking. A lot of people take spills. So she had her helmet with her name, address, and phone number and contacts, I think. There was always that note in her helmet with that information. And it was probably why, allegedly, perhaps, potentially, in my humble conspiracy theory opinion, probably a likely reason why her husband thought using a bicycle ride would be a good excuse for why she was missing. He couldn't pull it off to save his life because everything he said and did was incorrect and inaccurate. And before he even arrived, they were probably very suspicious of him working on Mother's Day, and they were probably also super suspicious of a lot of other things he said and did before he even got there. But then I put links in one of my most recent videos about this case to all the body cam footage of Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew's case, and the body cam footage that the police officer one of the police officers has of when he initially arrives and gets out of his pickup truck and is instantly like sad and says, is that where they found her? Is that where the bike was? Not where they found her, but where the bike was. And then, they're kind of like, yeah, but it's weird because, there's no broken branches. It's not scratched. The front tire is locked. It's jammed. And almost immediately, Barry says, "Lion?" And the officer's like, "Lying?" And he's like, "Lion. Could it have been a cat that got her?" It's truly bizarre. Truly bizarre. So, this case of Idaho 4, with that announcement yesterday of this plea agreement, comes a week and a half after the Morphew case of Barry Morphew getting rearrested. I don't even know if he's been extradited to Colorado yet from Arizona. But I spent a handful of videos reading through the entire 131-page affidavit from 2021 when they arrested him the first time. Fred Field, hello. You did not miss a rant, sir. Look at you. It has like number one thing next to your name. I don't know if that means that you're like a member or what, but I don't think I've seen that sticker before. I always thank you for being here, and I just appreciate all your support. How are you doing? I just heard something, and I'm trying not to be too flighty jumping tracks. I am extremely overwhelmed with all these cases, so I'm probably gonna be extremely flighty jumping tracks. Right before I came on, I was catching a Democracy Now! Video about climate change, and they were talking about like a heat dome, which is not something I'm familiar with, but it is something that I've been living in for the last couple of weeks here in Ohio. I know you've been living in it too, Fred Field. The heat dome is very dangerous, and it's been going on in other countries as well. So the temperatures that we had in this area this past June that just ended yesterday are some of the hottest on record for June. And it was miserable. And it's been really bizarre too this last, I don't know, maybe a week almost. It's just been pouring buckets and buckets and buckets of rain. There was such a huge storm yesterday. I think right around the time I was finding out about the Koberger case. I was at my daughter's basketball game, and I got a text from a friend about the Koberger case plea agreement. I was like, no way, this has got to be fake news, fake news, fake news. And I'm looking at it, and then it sounded like thunder, but it wasn't thunder. It's just that sound of rivers of rain dumping from the sky on a big roof. I know you know what that sound is, Fred, because you work at Menards. And it was that kind of noise, like as if you're in Costco or Menards or Lowe's or one of these big box stores where the water is just coming down in rivers, and it sounds like thunder. It's crazy. And when you first hear it, a lot of times you're like kind of taken off guard, unless you already are expecting it to rain. But I don't think any of us in that gym were expecting that. And we were all just like, whoa. By the time the game was over, it was just drizzling, but there was just floods everywhere in rivers. So the climate change is something that's very real, that ties right back into the political climate, and all of this crazy trying to say that there's no such thing as climate change is just nuts. Like, yeah, I wish there was no such thing as climate change, and it's possible that some of the damage done to our climate is natural occurrence and evolution, but certainly a good amount of it is from, I think, fossil fuel burning. I think that's primarily what's causing it. But whatever it is, it's costing people their lives. It's costing animals their lives. It's causing a lot of forest fires. Let's go back to the fire on Sunday in Idaho, because I started to say this. I don't think I got through the thought. The arsonist, the 20-year-old that allegedly set that brush fire so that he could then ambush and be a sniper towards the first responders on Sunday in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Unbelievable. Disgusting. So 3 first responders were had slugs in them, 2 of them fatally, and 1 of them I think is in stable condition in a hospital. And then the alleged unaliver was located unalive. And I don't think they have said yet whether that was self-inflicted or maybe from SWAT teams. But I thought that was very bizarre when it happened on Sunday. And then yesterday with this Koberger thing, I'm like, what are the chances of that happening in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, the day before the announcement of this plea agreement with the Koberger case? And who knows if the plea agreement is going to become complete, or if something is going to come unraveled and it's not complete. I don't know. I never thought the Koberger Idaho 4 case would go to trial, but I didn't think there would be a plea agreement. I thought that there would be, honestly, that he would be Epsteined. So what does Fred say? First day back at work today, 3 trucks to unload. I am trashed. No significant rain for a week here. You're kidding me, because you're only 2 states away. I mean, you're just right on the other side of Indiana in that greater Chicago area. We have been hit with like monsoons almost every day. That's even weirder to me. And Fred says, my lieutenant's son was shocked about the Idaho shooting. Yes. So, my husband's a first responder too. He's law enforcement. He's also part of the rescue squad in this area. That he's a firefighter and an EMT. And he was not shocked. He said that these things happen, that there's people that hate first responders, and that it's something that you always have to be aware of. I know that it's something that law enforcement is pretty much aware of at every traffic stop. The most dangerous thing for a police officer to do is a routine traffic stop. They can get hit by a car. That happens too often. And or they can get ambushed by the people in the car or other people. Like it could be a setup that they're pulling somebody over and then they get rolled up on by others. So the other extremely dangerous call for law enforcement is domestic violence calls. So most fatalities happen either in a domestic violence or just routine traffic stop. So nothing is routine for law enforcement, and nothing should be routine for any first responder. There's a lot of arsonists that are firefighters. I don't want to say like a high percentage of firefighters are arsonists, because I don't know if there's even a verifiable number of the percentage. My guess would be that it's like 1%, but it happens all too often that arsonists become firefighters because they love the fires, and then they can set them and put them out, right? Kind of reminds me of El Presidente doing that metaphorically all over the planet right now, and possibly even literally. In my humble conspiracy theory opinion, allegedly, rain has missed us to the south central Illinois. Some storms along Wisconsin state line. Yeah. So, then we had the bizarre shooting in Minnesota a few weeks ago with the evil, evil freak that killed the Democrat House of Representatives, Melissa, starts with an H. Help me out here. I'm sure it's in my notes. Wasn't it Melissa somebody? And then her husband. Is it? Let me see. Democrat rep killed. That was so sad. And that was so bizarre. And then our president didn't go to their effing funeral. Like, screw him. Melissa Hortman and her husband. And then it was Senator Hoffman and his wife that are also Republican that were shot but survived. So that was just 2 weeks ago, you guys. Doesn't it seem like it was a year ago? I mean, trying to keep up with the insanity of, I think, especially since the day Elon posted that the public's never going to see the Epstein files because Trump is in them. And then he keeps posting things. Him and Trump keep going at it. Now Trump's going to deport him or have him eaten by alligators. One of those, or maybe both. You shouldn't put him in the... I shouldn't laugh, but man, you gotta have a sense of humor with this crap. He could put Elon in the Alcatraz, the alligator Alcatraz that they're opening in Florida, and then he could see if Elon could get eaten, because he seemed to really like the idea of the I don't want to say illegals because that's horrific, but the immigrants, the undocumented immigrants, or some of them are documented and it's doing that anyway. Let's see. The date of Elon Musk's post about the Epstein files. So June 7th is when it appears that he deleted his post. That's funny. There's so much. So much. Okay, so it was June 5th was when he posted it, allegedly. So almost a month ago. And then since then, we've had the Los Angeles ICE raids. We've had the Melissa Hortman and her husband, and then is it Hoffman's? Is that the ones that survived? I was just looking at that. Yeah, John Hoffman and his wife. But it also, I mean, it's hideous that our president did not go to their funeral or send his condolences or anything. What's even more hideous is the statement that he had made a week or two ago about how he wasn't going to call Governor Walz because he was a loser and what good would it do? The man is unreal. I can't even think of him as a man. He's a monster. He's just a decrepit piece of crap, in my opinion. And there was also that house fire a couple of months ago at Governor Shapiro's house. Not his house. That house, the governor's mansion, is owned by the state, but he was living in it, and that place was torched, and they had 25 people in there, and fortunately they all got out unscathed. But that type of thing doesn't really happen in our country, not very often. Neither does the thing that happened to the Hortmans and the Hoffmans. That does not happen very often in our country. These types of things happen rampantly, in my opinion, when Mr. T is in office. I said it last week, I think. George Floyd, that wasn't the only case like that. That was really ramping up under the Trump administration. And also domestic violence. I mean, when you think about it, even the Watts happened under the Trump administration. 2016 was when he was elected. Or was it the end of 2015 that he was elected? No, it was the end of 2016 that he was elected. So January 2017 was when he was installed, when he was inaugurated the first time. And then the Watts case was a year and a half later. And then that Frazee case, that was right around the same time as the Watts case. I think that was like a month away. Let's see. Patrick Frazee murder case in Colorado. Thanksgiving of 2018. So that was 3 months or 2 months after 3 months after the Watts case. The Watts was August 13th of 2018. So a lot of domestic violence. The Suzanne Morphew case under the Trump administration. In fact, it was only 2 weeks and a day, maybe 2 weeks and 2 days prior to George Floyd. A horrific case of misogyny and feminicide. I know people get very triggered by that, but why? Why do you get triggered by the reality that domestic violence is a hate crime, as far as I'm concerned? When it's men taking the lives of women, that kind of misogyny, that kind of fatal misogyny is absolutely a hate crime. And that's what feminicide is, if I'm saying it right. It's a tricky word because there's feminicide and then there's femicide. So there's both. I think the feminicide is the one that I would call a hate crime. And then femicide is just that it's female that is the victim. Oh man, but the sexism, the racism, it's insane. And then you've got the Idaho 4, which happened 2022. You've got a large portion of the Moscow Police Department that is not working there anymore. You've got um, Detective Gary Toolinson from the Idaho State Police. You've got him scrubbed out of all the articles. Like, why scrub? When things are scrubbed, to me, that's indicative of a cover up. I mean, why else would you scrub? Why wouldn't you just issue a correction or something to that effect? Scrubbing is covering up. And a lot of people that have studied the Watts case think that the Watts case was a cover up. And the way they were able to cover for any accomplice or accomplices was by taking a plea agreement with Chris Watts that he almost certainly didn't act alone. And in my opinion, he absolutely did not act alone. He at least had the cooperation of and the help of his mistress. But I think it was more than cooperation and help. I think she very likely hatched the plan, and there were very likely more people than just her involved. Maybe her friend Jim, maybe Troy McCoy. Um, anyway, let's get back to the situation with a potential cover up for whatever the F happened in Idaho at the University of Idaho in the off campus housing. You know, that off campus housing that they cannot mention the case. Mainstream media can't mention it without mentioning that it's off campus housing. It was a sorority house always. And it was technically off campus, but it's like literally right across the street from campus. Pretty much surrounded by campus, maybe like 2 or 3 sides of it surrounded by campus. I mean, I lived in a house like that in San Francisco that was up on Stanion, um, on the not on the campus of the University of San Francisco, but across the street from the athletic center and surrounded on 3 sides by the university. And we were technically not on campus, but we were surrounded by the university on 3 sides. There was only the one side going towards the bay that was regular public property, a regular residential area. But we were like basically on the campus, and we would pretty much tell people that we lived right in the middle of the campus, even though it was technically off campus. And, you know, I'm sure that historically students lived in that house. The person that we were renting it from purchased it so that his daughter could live there while she was going to school there. He was like an oral surgeon or something. And then she still lived there on one floor while he rented out the upper flat. Um, and, you know, people in the residence on both sides of us were also students. Like the entire block was students. Same thing in Idaho. So it's just really agitating to me that they're always like, oh, not affiliated with the University of Idaho. It's like, but they're all students there. So whether Koberger's guilty or not, whether he is taking the rap for a larger number of people, possibly. I know that those types of things happen. You know, if you are pegged for a crime by law enforcement, it's virtually impossible to get out of that, even if you didn't do it. And especially if you had some involvement, but you didn't do it alone. And then if you don't take the rap, usually standard is that the thugs will threaten not only your own safety, but the safety of your family. So you don't really have a choice in some of the situations like that I've seen in real life. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. I think it's important to keep in mind the home on Lambert Street. I was just looking that up the other day. The home across the street from Koberger's parents that was purchased by Susan Payne and a small group of other people the day after the homicides happened. So November 14th of 2022. And then they put that house on the market a few months later. It was a very nice house. The lots weren't that big in Albright. Isn't that the name of the town? I have it in here. The lots were like 1 acre. They try to act like they're spread out, but they're not. They're not spread out. An acre is a large plot of land to have to take care of, but it's not like you're having to like hike to get to your neighbor's house the way they try to act like. Let's see where I guess it's going back further. I've got so many notes in here. And maybe I didn't even write it down. I thought I wrote it all down because there's just so much information. So Lambsden is the name of the road. The Albrightsville is the name of the town. They purchased that house right across the street from the Kobergers. Like it literally is like staring down the Kobergers' house. Like you can see into each other's house right across the street. Not far away at all, just like a regular street, just like a regular neighbor. They purchased it for $430,000. That's when it was taken off the market. It was removed on the 14th, so it was already purchased. November 14th of 2022, and then they put it back on the market on March 21st of 2023 at a $5,000 loss. It, however, did not sell for 9 months. It was taken off the market and sold on December 20th, 2023 for $390,000. So they took a $40,000 loss in a 12-month period on a very nice parcel of land with an exquisite home on it. The house, you can see pictures of the inside and the outside on the internet. The address is 114 Lambsden if you want to look. And you can also see, depending on how you research, you can see the property owners. And Susan Payne, I don't know, could just be a coincidence, the dates and the last name. I do not know. Another last name that I forgot about is Dylan Mortensen, the DA for Kootenai County is Mortensen. Don't know if they're related. I wrote it down in here, but it might be better if I just look it up. DA Mortensen in Idaho. It's funny because it just goes right to Dylan Mortensen. See, maybe there is a connection. I don't know. Okay, let's see. I think I wrote down Mortensen's name in my notes, the DA, because I was just trying to write down all the things off the top of my head that I was just like, there's just too many weird things. Too many weird things. And definitely Mortensen is one of them, but maybe I did not write down his name. A lot of times I think I wrote things down and I didn't, or I just can't find it. It's super annoying. Because yeah, it was. I was looking at that just with the Coeur d'Alene. Let's see, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, DA Mortensen, District Attorney Mortensen, Idaho. And Stanley Mortensen, he's the prosecuting attorney, Kootenai County. So, oh, interesting. he was chosen, the commissioners chose him August 31st of 2022. So that just so happens to be 2.5 months before Dylan Mortensen's house is raided by a crazed person with a sharp edged object who doesn't touch her. Like, I mean, come on, who is going to go into a house with one little sharp edged object, maybe two, by themselves when they see that there's 6 cars parked in front of this house? 6. And they're expecting at least 6 people to be in the house. And then they're going to leave 2 unscathed. It doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. There's so many stupid things about the case. And sure, keep an open mind. Anything's possible. But where are you at, Fred? I'm just swimming. My head is just spinning from all this crap. It's a cluster. It's an absolute cluster. I have had trouble from the start believing one person did all 4. Exactly. And especially one person is not going to go into a house with 6 cars parked in front of it, in my opinion. I mean, he's just like this dork academic with what? Secret ninja skills? Come on. I mean, and then the whole thing with Toolinson. Not to mention how the law enforcement was basically stalking and harassing the girls that lived in that house, showing up for non-existent noise complaints. Give me a break. Trespassing. And then making that comment, no stairs to the balcony. What was that? Like weeks before the situation happened? Was that Sergeant Blaker that said that, or do I get confused? Was it a different sergeant? And then Rosendale was the tall one who was like leaning up against the beam that was holding up the balcony that didn't have a stairway going to it, and he's just like leaning up against the beam like he's so casual, so comfortable. And I don't think I've said this before, but Kaylee Gonzalez, if I'm saying her name right, this is why I usually call her Kaylee G. Kaylee Gonzalez. She came out to talk to those police officers, and I'm not criticizing for her for this at all. I'm actually complimenting her. She had a lot of attitude. It seemed to me that she knew her rights, and that she knew, or at least it wasn't right. Like, she knew something wasn't right. Somebody who really knows their rights would know that they're not allowed to come to the back door like that. And she even said something. And then she said, like, why are you coming to my back door? And they were like, well, we tried knocking at the front. Nobody came, which they did not. They did not knock at the front. As they were approaching, they spoke to somebody up in the window and said something like, have someone open the door. But they didn't even wait. They just walked straight around to the back. Completely illegal and trespassing. She came out. She had major attitude with them. She had her arms crossed most of the time. She was not amused. And, they asked her, like, do you know why we're here? And I think she guessed, like, noise complaint. And I think they said yes, but there was not a noise complaint. They admitted that to each other on their body cams right before they approached the home and trespassed. They were like, let's just go check on those girls across the street from where we got the noise complaint. And then Hunter, not Chapin, the other Hunter Johnson, came out to see what was going on with the police officers and Kaylee, and he had a bunch of zip ties around his wrist. And I guess that's some type of drinking game or something. I'm not familiar. But he sat down on the couch that was out there and was just kind of observing, paying attention. But like I said, I don't think I've ever talked about this in my content, but I've often wondered if Kaylee was just flipping a little too much attitude towards the law enforcement for them. Cops don't like that at all. They don't like the slightest bit of disrespect. It'll get you into a lot of trouble. Often it'll get you into a lot of trouble. I don't want to say that across the boards because, a lot of people have attitude, and a lot of times it's probably neither here nor there. But it's not a good idea to cop an attitude when you're dealing with law enforcement if you want to not get cited or arrested. It's always a good idea to be as polite and respectful as possible. However, if law enforcement is breaking the law, like trespassing on your property, then you have every right to call them out for it. So there's that. It's just something I've wondered often about in this case, because we know that Officer Payne, in my opinion, had a thing for not only Xana, but obviously for Maddie Mogen. Remember when he was shining the light in Xana's eyes and asking her about Morgan? Is Morgan here? I want to talk to Morgan. I need to see Morgan. And Xana's just like hammered and scared and in her underpants practically, and it's late at night, and she's just like, flashlight in the eyes is never a good thing. She's just like, I don't have a Morgan. And then he keeps talking, and then she's like, oh, Madison. Yeah. So law enforcement went to their house a lot, routinely. And, which pretty girl is going to answer the door this time? I remember a party that they were having where Bethany answers the door and claims that none of the people that live there are home when she's obviously one of the people that lives there. But she's one of the people that was unscathed. So we've got Dylan Mortensen unscathed with the same last name as the DA, the district attorney for Kootenai County. And then I looked that up. What was his first name again? Is it still right here? Yeah. Stanley Mortensen. And he's just sworn in on August 31st. 2.5 months prior to the attacks. And police chief, who I call Small Fry, because I don't think very highly of him at all, the guy who I have in the the thumbnail. I've got the picture of the guy, the man without a face, that's in the back of the corner club a couple hours before the slashing, and a picture next to Officer Small Fry, because I fully believe that that's Officer Small Fry standing in the doorway talking to Adam, who worked at the bar. And I think it's Jack Showalter that's in front of him. That's also looks like part of the conversation. And he's sort of got an eye on the girls, it looks like, out of his peripheral vision. And then he's the one who walked with them over to the grub truck. And they're sitting on some bar stools talking to Jack D. Again, Jack D initially said no, he wasn't there. He didn't go out that night. He had to work the next morning. He stayed in, and his roommates even verified, yeah, he stayed in. And then lo and behold, it turns out that that's him in the still shot from the surveillance camera at the bar. We can't forget these things. We can't forget that that still shot of the girls in the back of the corner club with Adam, Jack S, Jack D, and who I believe is the police chief. About 1:30 in the morning, I think is what the timestamp on it says, and that photograph was released on the streets of YouTube right around December 27th, and Koberger was arrested on December 29th. And then I think that PCA, the probable cause affidavit, the arrest affidavit, was released on or right after the day of the arrest. So then we thought we were getting this story, but I don't think so. I think that's all crap. So there was a channel, one of the channels that dropped that image from the back of the corner cone of Kaylee and Maddie sitting there talking to Jack D with the other three right over their shoulders. One of the channels was called Get a Clue. And I've spoken about this channel quite a bit. At this point, it is completely scrubbed off of YouTube. But if you try to find it, you might find a thumbnail of another content creator who made a video about their channel. Get a Clue was the channel who had the same wallpaper is what you call it. So when you have your YouTube channel, you have your profile picture that's the circle, and then you have like the backdrop, that the background that I call the wallpaper. So the wallpaper from the channel Get a Clue was the exact same image as Kopaka's profile picture from Facebook. Brent Kopaka, the guy with the SWAT team thing a month after the homicide, the quadruple homicides. You just can't even track this crap. But what was it that I wanted to say about it? Here's the video. I took a picture of the screenshot, and they have a screenshot of Get a Clue's profile picture, which has the face of a wolf. I've often wondered if that channel, that content creator, wasn't somebody on the inside, like law enforcement, because of the types of videos that they made. And they always had like the freshest information that no one else had, as if they were there, as if they were present either during the commission of the crimes or the aftermath. And when I finally called them out, they stopped making videos. Get a Clue. That channel quit making videos for like a year. And I actually made a video where I'm talking about that. I'll put a link to it in the description, where I address it. And then after about a year, they did make a few more videos, but they've since scrubbed themselves off of YouTube. It's very bizarre. So they were one of the first channels that had that image from the back of the corner club. In fact, it was either their first or second video that they did on their channel was they used that as a thumbnail and talked about that. Do you remember? Oh my goodness, what about that whole thing? What was the name of that weirdo who like had his cell phone and was like talking into the computer screen but blocking his face, and it was just like the blank screen? It was something like 1979, like Jasper 1979. Help me out here if anybody can remember. I'll remember it and write it down. It was all the rage because people thought that that was the unaliver. People thought that Papa Rogers was the unaliver. All this weird, weird stuff. So let me see. So the channel that has the video with the screenshot for the thumbnail of the Get a Clue channel, the channel is Watching the Watchers. You guys know that channel, right? It's a channel that's similar size to my own. Most of their 452 videos are about the Idaho 4. And I just found it fascinating that Watching the Watchers 999 is the name of the channel, or what it says here with the @ Watching the Watchers. So that's their handle, Watching the Watchers 999. 999 is like something entirely different when you turn it upside down and it's 666. So they haven't made a video in a year either. Bizarre. At least a year. So why do these channels scrub themselves from the internet? Because if they're taking their own stuff down just for whatever reason that they feel like it, or let's say that YouTube is taking them down because they violated terms and policies or something like that, they're not going to be scrubbed. They're just going to be incapacitated from making more videos. And maybe the channel will be deleted and it's gone, but you'd still be able to find it like in the Wayback Machine and stuff like that. But when things are scrubbed, they're usually scrubbed out of the Wayback Machine. So you only know that it existed if you have screenshots or somebody else has screenshots, which is why a lot of sleuthers take a lot of screenshots, because we know that things will get deleted and scrubbed. And then when it's scrubbed, to me, that's always extraordinarily relevant information. So I don't want to drone on for too long. I want people to watch this video, and I know it's hard for any of us to watch really long videos, and I've been on for about an hour and 15 minutes. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. I don't know if you're still here, Fred, my dear. Somebody's here. It might be you. Either way, I appreciate everyone who's watching. The replay crew, very much appreciated. Thank you for paying attention to my videos. Please hit that like button, share, subscribe, turn on your notification bell to ring, all that good stuff. Didn't Mr. T, El Presidente, say that it was really stupid to have Russia excluded from the G8, making it the G7 summit? Didn't they withdraw in 2017, 2018 when he was the president? It's funny because he'll say things about how stupid things were and how that wouldn't have happened if he was president. He'll say it about times when he was president. He's so freaking out of control. It is insanity. Complete insanity. OMG. So before I wrap up, let me talk about, once again, there's videos, there's content about it, but it's one of these things that's been scrubbed from the internet. Barry Morphew, during one of the first days when he searched for his missing wife, so that would probably be like March 11th, or I'm sorry, May 11th or 12th of 2020. So he said that she went missing on Mother's Day. We think that she actually probably was incapacitated and potentially unalived on the day before Mother's Day. So I think it was just like a day or two later that Barry was pretending to search for his missing wife with the fire department. And the fire department has completely cut ties with him. So his first excuse for being not at home on Mother's Day was he said that there was like a firefighting training in Denver on Mother's Day, on his Sunday, Mother's Day of all Sundays. And he was confronted with, no, there was no firefighting training on Mother's Day, on Sunday in Denver. And then came the story about the landscaping job. The landscaping job was a real job. It's just that he twisted it and contorted it to fit his needs for the purpose of all of this crap. And he was trying to have people go to Denver looking for things rather than Broomfield, where he was, because there was a lot of evidence in Broomfield, like in the dumpster at the Holiday Inn where he stayed. There was evidence in the room. There was evidence on their surveillance footage. There was a lot of evidence. So the first day that he was searching for Suzanne, I'm pretty sure it was day one, when he was wearing like army fatigues, like khakis, pants, and, you know, like tan and green. I'm pretty sure the pants were camo, may have had a camo vest, may have had like tan or something like that, or a t-shirt. But anyway, he threw himself on the ground. Anybody remember that? He threw himself on the ground, proceeded to lie there for about 30 minutes in the dirt, just randomly in the middle of the search, and just kind of fussed and cried and acted like he was distraught and tired. And people were just perplexed, like, what is this guy doing? And I always wondered if he like saw a drop of blood or something, some type of evidence that he was afraid other people were going to see. So he threw himself on top of it and then, you know, could have like mushed it and mashed it. And then by the time he got up, maybe he didn't even get up until there was nobody around, and then he was able to like brush it or something. I don't know. But it's really impossible to find anything about that. And there was a lot about that. Granted, I was on Facebook back then, and it was all over the Facebook groups. People were just like, WTF. And even Paula Plunder had a video about it. And her channel did get shut down for a while, and she did lose all of her videos. So she hasn't been able to find that either. So if anybody has any information about that, please email me at JusticeAtooZ@gmail.com. And I would be ever so grateful. And I'd give you a humongous shout out, as many as you want, or none at all if you don't want any. But yeah, I've been looking for that, and I will not give up. I want the picture of him laying on the ground, because back when it happened, I didn't believe that it was what people were saying it was. I was like, that can't be. That he's what? Like, who does that? And it's not funny. But the thing that's really odd is there's allegedly the person that he was dating from the fire department that was 29 years old, named Allison. I mentioned her in my video yesterday and mentioned that I had her last name back then and looked up her Facebook account and saw photos of her. She looked a lot like Suzanne. She looked a lot like Shoshana, the girlfriend that Barry had been dating for the last 4 years. The one who's recently spoken out against him, that she's scared of him. They broke up, I think, sometime this last year. They started dating after they ran into each other at the dumpster 2 months after his wife went missing. And she got in some kind of legal trouble where like she got arrested for like stealing a package off the porch of the Morphew home or something. It seemed like she was doing something for Barry, in my opinion, that she was doing him a favor, because he probably wasn't allowed to be at his own property. I don't know. I'm not going to try to pretend that I know anything. I'm just going to ask questions. But she got busted by the police for trespassing. Like, I think she's got a criminal record from it. I think there's like mugshots and stuff. and her last name is Darke, Shoshana Darke, Darke, and people called her Shosho. And she denied that she was dating Barry for the longest time. Oh no, we're just friends. But now she's admitting, since they broke up, she's admitting that she dated him and that he scared her. And that I think essentially she has said that she didn't think that he had anything to do with it at first, but now she believes that he did have something to do with it. But back to one of the points that I want to really hit home is that there was that 29-year-old Allison, the 29-year-old firefighter, volunteer firefighter that Barry allegedly was having an affair with. There was the fact that he was a volunteer firefighter. There was the fact that he was searching with the firefighters. They had to tell him he wasn't allowed to, that it was a conflict of interests, and that he used firefighting training as his first alibi excuse for why he would have left his baby mama alone on Mother's Day, before he changed his alibi to the whole Broomfield story. But my point is that the firefighting, everything firefighting, has been whitewashed out of this case, which kind of reminds me of, in the Watts case, everything with Anadarko being scrubbed out of the case. People might not realize that Anadarko was going through a multi-billion-dollar merger at the time that the Watts tragedy occurred on one of the properties that they were leasing for their oil. So Survey 319, where the Watts females' remains were discovered, was leased by Anadarko. It was a family's property. I believe that their last name is Cervi. That's where that comes from, Cervi. It's like an Italian name or something. And so the multi-billion-dollar merger that was in the process, I think it took like a year or two. I think it finally wrapped up a year or two after the Watts familicide. But it's my suspicion that that's why the DA whitewashed the whole case and just had Chris take a plea deal so that he wouldn't have to implicate maybe 2 or more Anadarko employees. It's also my suspicion that the families would have been paid out handsomely because this happened on Anadarko property, because they were able to contain this tragedy. During the time that this tragedy occurred, it was discovered that it was related to Survey 319 and Anadarko and Watts' confession. The price of the multi-billion-dollar merger was plummeting by millions every day. So as soon as they got their plea agreement with Chris Watts, that stopped the bleeding. And then they were able to proceed forward with their multi-billion-dollar merger. And I think the company that purchased Anadarko was Occidental. I think Kelly mentioned it the night before last in her live. And I had known that before because I thought it was Exxon or one of those, but I think it was Occidental. And I don't know if Occidental owns Exxon. I don't know anything about those bazillion-dollar companies. I'm sure that our president does. I mean, these are the fossil fuels, going back to where I started this video, these are the fossil fuels that are destroying our environment. And a lot of the politics right now is all about trying to maintain dependence on fossil fuels so that the fossil fuel companies can continue to rake in the money, when with technology, the direction would be to move away from that, which is, lithium and other, I don't know, uranium. I'm not even sure. I think cobalt is one of the rare earth minerals that they're after with all of these land grabs and Musk and Russia and all this. So it's sort of like the lithium. It's almost like going back to when it was like nuclear energy as opposed to electricity, but now it's like fossil fuels versus other earth minerals, basically. So I can't keep it all straight. I'm just gonna like shut down my YouTube channel now and call it a day. Kidding. I mean, I'm gonna shut down my live, but I'm not gonna shut down my channel. So hit that like button. Thanks for being here. I do need to wrap up quickly, and take good care of yourself. Love and light. Eat your fruits and veggies and your protein and drink your water. See you on the next one. Thanks for being here.